Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to an all-new edition of War Week Radio. Well, this time it's set in the evening chats. Guys, I want to welcome you. Thanks for tuning in at this late hour. Boy, we've got a lot to discuss. We're going to give you our final thoughts on Charlo versus Castano with my brother, Mr. IOTBA, Karray Bradshaw. Karray, welcome to the show, brother.
Man, shout out to everybody here on War Week Radio. Joe, shout out to everybody who contribute, Coach James Gogi, Lee, and everybody else. Shout out to y'all, man.
Well, I tell you what, brother, we've got a lot to discuss. We're going to be giving you our final thoughts on Charlo versus Castano. We're going to be talking about the scoring process extensively, giving everyone a refresher as to what goes into judging a prize fight. Not only, the obvious going over the scoring criteria, but we're going to give you firsthand information from several boxing judges who are very dear friends of mine, guys who have been in the business for decades, and hopefully it'll clear some of this corruption nonsense up, right? Yeah, guys, it's shocking, right? It's like even guys who have been in this business and been covering the sport for decades, they'll often resort to, rather than critically thinking about something, they'll resort to it's corruption, it's just fixed, it's just shady scoring. Oh, guys, come on. That's just lazy thinking. And we're going to explain everything. So before you leave tonight, when you leave this show tonight, hopefully without a shadow of a doubt, you will understand that, boy, this is not corruption, a product of corruption, some of these odd scorecards, right? Guys, we're also going to discuss the news dropped by Mr. Mike Coppinger that Canelo versus Plant is very close to being a done deal for PBC Fox. And we'll talk about how this took place, what's going to go down. I'll give you what I've been hearing from some of my peeps as to what the price may be and as to what Canelo will be making for this fight. We'll also talk about, and it was just announced today, Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk is official for September 25th, guys. We'll talk about that deal, and we'll size up that matchup as well. But, guys, before we continue, I do have to remind everyone that this show is brought to you by always FightSaga.com. Guys, for all the latest boxing news, please go visit FightSaga.com on the daily. And also, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to War Week Radio. But, guys, let's get started. Karray, how did you score this fight, brother? Because, once again, the judges at ringside had it. Steve Weisfeld, respected referee from New Jersey, had it scored 114-113 for Brian Castano from Argentina. Judge Tim Cheatham from Nevada had it scored 114-114, a draw. Oh, and the in trouble, Mr. Nelson Vasquez of Puerto Rico scored the fight 9-3 in favor of Jermell Charlo, 117-111, which, and once again, this is the shame of it all, right? When you look at a scorecard like this, it was a great fight. And a lot of people agree that it was a fight of the year candidate.
Oh yeah.
Saturday,
yes,
right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's such a shame that people, they're stinking all over this event because of one scorecard that really wasn't of any consequence. When you think about it, Karray,
yep.
Judge Nelson Vasquez has scored. He could have scored 7-5 for Charlo, or 12 rounds to nothing for Charlo, and we would have had the same result.
Same result,
right? Yep. So that's one of the problems I have with it. But your thoughts on this, and how did you score this fight on Saturday night?
Man, I had it 6 rounds for Castano, 5 rounds for Charlo, 1 even round. So my scorecard was 114 to 113. And my thoughts on this fight. Everybody, we supposed to love the sport of boxing, right? And we just seen 2 elite fighters in
Yep.
Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano put on a tremendous performance this previous Saturday night. And instead of us talking about how great that fight was, how intriguing, how close, how these guys were going tick for tack in that ring, we're talking about a robbery. Joe,
Robbery.
and like you said, it's a lot of people who are well respected, who've been in this business for decades. And the rubbish that's coming out of their mouth when they even discuss this fight and talking about robbery, man, this was a close fight. Whether if you had Charlo 115 or 113, or you had Castano 115 or 113, a draw is justified.
Yeah, you know what, man? And it's funny. I've heard so many just ridiculous comments from guys that I customarily have a lot of respect for, right? Comments from guys like Steve Kim, who they will claim, and I'm like, well, more than likely, guys, it's competence because it's incompetence because when you look at Nelson Vasquez, this is a guy who's been a judge, a ringside scorer for many big events since 1987. He scored over 1,000 fights. In my opinion, guys, and you look at the last fight card that he actually almost blew was the cruiserweight fight on Fox a couple weeks ago, right? He was the odd man out on that fight scorecard as well. So this is 2 consecutive scorecards that he's botched. In my opinion, this is a product of a guy just like David or Dr. Lou Moret, just like Larry Hazard. It seems that they're a little too old to be doing this job any further. Guys, this is a very physical and strenuous job. Keep in mind, you're just sitting there at ringside, but you've got to be focused for all 3 minutes of every round, right? And you're there scoring preliminary bouts. You've been there all afternoon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very it's not as easy as it may seem. And so guys who are a little long in the tooth, I think they should be relieved of their judging duties. And I'm truly convinced that that's the case with Nelson Vasquez, that it was a product of incompetence. So, and guys like Steve Kim will say, well, what's worse? What's worse, incompetence or corruption? Well, yeah, it's obvious corruption is worse. Look, and I'm sorry to do my bad Steve Kim impression. I made him sound like Sylvester the Cat right there, didn't I? So, but no, seriously. Obviously, corruption is worse. That's an intent to defraud. And we're going to go into all of that before the show is over, right? But in my opinion, Nelson Vasquez, yeah, he's getting a little long in the tooth and should be relieved of his duties. Peter chimes in. He says my score was 114, a draw. Charlo was strong in the championship rounds. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, Peter. And my scorecard was, and I'll break it down, guys. In the first half of the fight, I had Castano winning 4-2, giving Charlo round number 2, in which he hurt Brian Castano. And then I also gave him round number 5, right? Which was a very close round that could have gone either way. In the back half of the fight, I gave Charlo 4 out of the 6 rounds, right? Mm-hmm. But I did have Brian Castano going into the 10th with a healthy lead, 6-3. And obviously Derek James saw it that way as well, because he told his fighter, you know what, champ, you need a knockout. You need to do more. You're making this fight a lot more difficult than it has to be. In my opinion, you need a knockout, champ. And so he went out the next round and hurt Brian Castano noticeably. In fact, it was such a one-sided round that Judge Steve Weisfeld scored that round a 10-8 round. And there's some controversy there, Karray. And I'm going to go into this. What are your thoughts on judges rewarding a 10-8 round for a one-sided round when there isn't a knockdown? Do you agree with that practice or not?
Oh, absolutely, I agree with it, because you have to look at it from this standpoint. When Charlo hit Castano and he hurt him terribly, we seen Castano get out of character. Joseph, you break this down all the time. Castano is a come forward, intelligent, come forward pressure fighter. When Castano is on his back foot, he is uncomfortable fighting that way. And Charlo had him on his back foot the entire 10th round after Charlo hurt Castano. So that 10-8 round was definitely justified, in my opinion.
Well, not only did he have him on his back foot, Castano wasn't firing back. He was covering up for most of the round. He was looking to merely survive. And that was obvious to everyone at ringside, including yours truly. Thank you, PBC, for giving me that credential. I was there ringside, and that's how I scored it. But I usually don't like to. I can understand why. And it used to be a very common practice back in the day, scoring a 2-point round. In fact, editor Lee Cleveland, he wasn't able to make it tonight, but he is a huge proponent of 2-point rounds without a knockdown if it's a one-sided round in which one fighter bludgeons the other from pillar to post, and there's no back and forth action, right? So Steve Weisfeld scored it that way, and I gave the final 3 rounds to Jermell Charlo. Round 10 was a no-brainer, but I scored it 10-9. I usually don't like to give a 2-point round unless there's a knockdown, but that used to be a common practice, just like even rounds. Correct. You scored the first round even because there wasn't very much action.
Exactly.
Which is something that a lot of judges used to do back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And one of the reasons for it is they don't like to have a very close round where there's not very much action determining the outcome of the fight. Right? Now, in recent years, commissions, state athletic commissions will frown upon even rounds, and I have no idea why. Because the last thing fans want is to have an uneventful round in which nothing really happens, determining the outcome and affecting the scorecards, right? So, I'm a huge proponent of even rounds. So credit to you, Karray, for putting one in there in the first. I thought Castano did enough to carry the first round, but that was just a judgment call while I was at ringside, right?
Yep.
So there it is, guys. I scored it just like Judge Tim Cheatham. Karray scored it just like Judge Steve Weisfeld. And I don't think anyone scored it like Judge Nelson Vasquez. 9 rounds to 3 for Charlo. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but you know what's crazy though? Like, that's what people trying to take. Like you said, Joe, in the opening statement when you spoke on the 117 to 111 scorecard. We need to stop that, because like you said, even if it was 12 rounds to 0 or if it was 7-5, it still wouldn't have changed the outcome. People are making too much big of a deal of that. Now, you should make a big deal of it to for the commission, who's ever over him, to look at, and talk to him about why did he score it like that. But this still wouldn't have changed the outcome in no way. So stop.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And this is what I wrote post-fight, and this is what I told Tim Smith of PBC post-fight. I said, look, whether it was 115, 113, or 120, 108 for Charlo, his scorecard doesn't change the verdict. Too many are making too much of this and detracting from the majesty of a great fight. Look, it's the sole reason why we have 3 different judges at ringside in 3 different locations. The system actually prevailed this time. It was a draw, right? And I have no problem with scoring this a draw, right, guys? I mean, let's take a look at what this is what Charlo had to say on Twitter today, right? Reflecting on the draw with Brian Castano. He said this, quote, Brian Castano is one hell of a better fighter than anyone gave him credit for, and he came to fight for his life Saturday. If fights are scored as a whole, I landed the harder and better shots, but boxing isn't scored that way. Boxing is scored on a round-by-round basis. I've always said to take a belt from a champion, you need to take that belt, and the judges felt neither of us did enough to take those belts, and they scored it a draw. I don't want to become undisputed by narrow, controversial decision. I want to make a statement. I didn't do my part to get the KO, and as always, I will continue to learn and improve. When we run it back, just like I adjusted in Harrison 2, there will be no doubt about the result. End quote. Very classy response today from Jermell Charlo, and I'm with him. You know, sign it up. Let's see the rematch. And, you know, it's funny. He's getting criticized right now because his immediate post-fight comments at the press conference. And I was there, and I was just kind of laughing. In fact, you can probably hear me laughing noticeably in the background when he said this, right? When someone asked him, well, are you going to go directly? Do you want a rematch, Jermell? And he goes, well, I don't know. You're gonna have to ask my manager, Al Heyman. And I kind of started laughing about that. I'm like, come on, dude. Dude, does he have to wipe your ass, man, when you go to the bathroom as well? Dude, do you have to ask to be relieved, man, to go to dude, come on. Do you have to finish all your vegetables before you're allowed to go to your room? Come on. So seriously, guys, let's get into this though, and let's talk about the judging, because I've heard some absurd comments. Oh, first of all, this is the big one. Oh, dude, it's obvious this is just a product of Texas judging. Oh, wait, well, first of all, the judges were chosen by the promoter who handles both fighters, right? And they wanted neutral judges. So you got one from Nevada, one from New Jersey, and one from Puerto Rico, right? Those were all picked and selected by the PBC, approved by both camps before the fight, right? This is what Peter has to say. On the replay, you can see a lot of the punches from Castano was hitting Charlo in the gloves. I know it's different for the judges live on ringside. Well, I can tell you from ringside, both Charlo and both Castano were hitting gloves a lot of the time. But I tell you what, both guys can crack. Both guys are explosive. And I knew that was going to happen. Guys, if you listen to the preview that we did last week, we told you that this was an even money fight. And it played out that way. Look, I'll say this.
So you know what it is, Joe? It's
Go ahead, sir.
You know, it's like these boxing fans of today, they don't do their research on who these fighters is. See, it was a shock to them to see Castano put on a great performance against a guy that's well known in Jermell Charlo, because they did not know of Castano. So it's a shock to everybody. So, y'all need to do y'all research, do y'all due diligence. At being a part of this boxing community, you have to do that. Don't look at Jermell Charlo because he's the more...
Well, Karray, I will say that everyone listening to the show is conducting their due diligence by listening. And I'm about to break this down, guys, okay? Because once again, I'm going to quote Steve Kim, because this is just hilarious, and this is just lazy journalism. Now, the pessimist that Steve Kim is, right? And he is often salty when it comes to the business of boxing. He said this, quote, "Fighters fight for today and judges judge for tomorrow." Quote, end quote, whatever the hell that means. So he's trying to say that it's in a judge's best interest to, well, cater to the A side and suck up to the PBC favorite, the promoter's favorite, right? Wrong. Look, the commissions handle and they will mentor these guys. They'll discipline these guys. No, like speaking to judges from ringside. And guys are very accessible. All you have to do is speak to them at a live event. They'll be more than happy to talk to you and talk about the process. Once again, guys, judges, they don't view the entire body of work. In fact, at the end of the fight, they don't even know how they scored the fight. They're looking at it at a round-by-round basis in which they will get their slip of paper and they will score the round, immediately handing it to the referee, and they will forget about that round and score the next. So in essence, they're scoring every single round as its own individual prize fight. So in their mind, during the fight, they're scoring 12 individual fights. And because they don't have a huge piece of paper where they see what they've done 5 rounds prior, they will often forget how they scored the fight. Talking to several judges, they're at ringside, and when they hear the announcer come on, here's the score from the judges at ringside. Judge Tim Cheatham scores the bout. Like in their mind, and they've told me this, they're praying that their scorecard is very similar to the guy across the ring from them. They're hoping that they don't have an oddball scorecard that is way off from the other judges. They're praying for that. They're like, geez, I don't remember how I scored it. Gosh, I hope it's very similar, because the last thing they want to do is to be disciplined by the state athletic commissions, right? Because what happens when they're disciplined by the state athletic commissions? They get demoted to only covering regional and local events. And for a guy like Nelson Vasquez, that's the last thing he wants to do. After scoring over 1,000 fight cards, at his age, the last thing he wants to do is have to score a bunch of club fighters in front of 200 fans, right? That's the last thing he wants to do. But that's what happens. That's how these state athletic commissions will monitor and discipline these judges. They want to cover the big events, okay? And keep in mind also, guys, all of these judges have other businesses and occupations. They don't do this for a living. This is secondary income for them. They don't do this for the money. They love this job. They love having the best seat in the house and being a part of this process, right? And it's funny. Promoters will often do, and what's funny is people think it's corruption when there's an obvious A side in as part of the promotion, right? Guys, I'm sorry, but that's part of the game. It's no different than a football team getting the best record in the NFC and earning the #1 seed in the playoffs. It's no different than that, guys. But everyone accepts that in football because, well, that's just the way it is. They had a 14-2 record on the season, so they get the #1 seed and they get to host. They get home field throughout the playoffs. And in the first, they get a bye in the first week. Well, that's just the way it is, guys. Okay, I don't see you belly aching about that. It's the same thing. Yep. When you become a marketable commodity in this sport and you're a big ticket seller and you've been at this stage time and time and time again, you're a recognizable name among fans in boxing. Guess what? You're going to get the A-side treatment. So what that means is you're going to get announced last. And once again, these are tactics that promoters have been using for decades. It's something that the mob came up with back in the 40s. The A side will walk to the ring last. The A side will be the first one in the red corner on the judge's scorecard. The A side will be announced last. Okay? And again, it's something that promoters devised to influence the judges at ringside, but they're not telling them how to score. It's no different than having home field throughout in the playoffs. So
and
this
Joe,
poor
the fighter earned the fighter earned that. You know, if you walking out to the ring last, you earned that.
Exactly. Just like the football team earned that home field throughout. It's no different. Just like in basketball, just like in baseball, just like in football, it's the same thing as having a home field advantage in those other sports. But why don't fans bellyache about that, Karray?
You know, it's a double standard. It's a double standard when it comes to boxing. You know, it's a double standard.
Well, and this is what I hope to eliminate, guys, with all of this. It's almost become a reflex, right? It's almost become a reflex in boxing where fans they just they've gotten used to just complaining about the sport rather than thinking about things critically. They will immediately turn and throw out that corruption argument, right? And once again, let's go back to the judges at ringside. Like I said, these guys, they will score every round or every fight on a round-by-round basis. And it's funny, I remember sitting next to someone, and I don't remember what site he was from or who he was representing or what website or what YouTube page he was part of, affiliated with. But at the end of the fight, he said, man, Castano kicked his ass. And I said, how did you score the fight, man? He goes, oh, well, I wasn't keeping score. I just from what I saw. And guys, that's how most fans are as well. They're looking at the entire body of work, right? And this is why we don't make very many predictions on this show, right? Because once again, the great Emmanuel Stewart taught me this. Look, if you want to be able to view the action unbiasedly, do not make predictions before any fight. Because ultimately, you want to be right. You want to be proven right.
Yep.
And your ego gets in the way, and it affects how you view the action ultimately. And I remember that, and it's absolutely true. So a lot of times these fans, they'll go into a fight thinking, oh, this guy's going to whoop this guy's ass, right? Oh, he's going to win easily, man. This is, and he's just a bit. And if it doesn't play out that way, with a little effect to how they view the action, they want to be right. Fans have big egos as well, especially the diehard ones, as you can see on any social media platform, right? But guys, these judges, they do not want to affect a hardworking fighter's career negatively. That's the last thing they want to do. They also don't want to get disciplined by the state athletic commissions, right? That's the last thing they want to do. They love being flown into these events. They love being at these hotels. They love having a ringside seat in front of a packed house. And I'm sorry, if you have too many odd or queer scorecards, you're not going to get the big events any longer. That's the way commissions discipline these judges and provide some kind of accountability, right?
Yep.
So that's the way it is, guys. Karray, your thoughts before we move forward?
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know, like, these judges have a lot going on when they at these arenas. Yep. You know, they're focused in on the fighters. And like you say, Joe, these guys don't know what their scorecard gonna be in. They score round by round. Like you said, it's
Yep.
like a 12-round fight. So
Yep.
how are these guys to know what their scorecard is going to be when they're at this huge event? You know,
They
with a
don't.
million things going on. So
They don't know
I
that. They
just,
don't know how they scored the fight until Jimmy Lennon Jr. announces their
Yep.
scorecard. That's the reality, guys. They're not
people
trying
got
to
to be
screw
careful
any
with that.
hardworking fighter out of any opportunity.
Yeah, and we got to be people got to be careful with that, because that's really putting a stain on these judges who work their tail off to get to where they at. And y'all have to understand, they also human. So the human element, sometimes we all make mistakes as human, but these guys, y'all have to take in account, these guys work their tail off to get in this position. So come on, we have to be a little bit more respectful on that.
Yeah, it's guys, it's utter nonsense at this point. It's nonsense. Look, it's an imperfect, subjective process scoring a prize fight. It's imperfect and subjective. And here's the primary scoring criteria. Your primary scoring criteria to determine who carries around is decided by clean, effective, and consequential punching. That's where the subjective part comes into play. Consequential. What's consequential to one judge may not be consequential to the other.
Exactly.
I can tell you just by speaking to judges, though, in professional prize fight scoring, right? Torque, power is what's most consequential. At least that's what's viewed by most as consequential. Now, if you still can't determine who carries around from that first tier scoring criterion, then you go to the second tier, which is ring generalship or effective aggression, right? Who's dictating the pace of the fight? Who's controlling range? Okay? But you only consider the second tier scoring criteria if you can't determine the winner from the first, which is ultimately clean, effective, and consequential punches landed. George Foreman once said, at the end of the day, a prize fight is a beauty contest if you don't get a clean knockout. And that is absolutely true. It's subjective, and it is not a product of corruption, guys. It's not. You talk to any of these judges, they want to do a good job, not only for these fighters, not only for the promoter, but for the health of the sport. That's it. And it's not, oh, Texas is the worst, man. Dude, it's no different than any other state athletic commission. And once again, that's why you have 3 judges at ringside.
Mm-hmm.
In case there's one, well, it's going to be offset by the 2 other judges, overruled, right?
Yep.
So once again, guys, it's not a perfect process, but there's a human element in every sport. Just look at baseball. Look at the strike zone. Okay, that is up to the discretion of the umpire.
Yep.
You look at the NFL. How many times have you seen a terrible call by the referees?
Yep.
How many times have you seen a terrible, crucial call by the officials in the NBA?
Yep.
Guys, there's a human element in every sport, and it's very imperfect. Unfortunately, fight fans have gotten so used to belly aching about this that it's become a reflex. Guys, stop it. You're not helping. And like Emmanuel Stewart always used to say, look, Joseph, if you can't help, don't hinder. So I'm urging you guys, pleading with you, don't hinder. If you can't help, don't hinder. Guys, think about this critically. Look at the situation and look at the judging scoring process critically. How can we improve upon this? The only thing I can think of is adding 2 more judges at ringside, right? But that becomes a little crowded. But adding 2 more judges at ringside and eliminating the 2 widest scores. What do you think about that idea, Karray?
I mean, it's possible it could work. My thing is, you hit the nail in the coffin when you let everyone know a human element is what a guy prefers. The strike zone, terrible calls in football, terrible calls in basketball. Like you say, bellyache has become the new norm for these fight fans. And like you said, Joe, they need to stop.
Yeah, it doesn't serve any purpose. It's like, who are you complaining to? Who are you complaining to? Does it make you feel better about the fight that you just paid for or watched?
And it's like, why is we talking about the judging when they got it right? The thing is, they got it right. When there's a close fight like that, how can you be mad at a draw? They got it right. We taking away of the sensational performance that Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano put on, and that is the sport that is taken away from them guys. And we have to show these fighters more respect than that, especially Charlo and Castano for that hell of a performance they put on Saturday night. I mean, hell of a performance.
Absolutely, guys, and let's do it all over again. Right? Let's do it all over again. Now, again, Breadman Edwards stated this on Twitter. He said, judges should be made to attend post-fight press conferences to explain their scorecards. You know what? I think that's a tremendous idea.
I agree with that.
And you know what? Fans will come to realize that there is no corruption. Right? Now, judges, once again, will have an off night just like everybody else. Just like fighters, just like athletes in other sports, just like referees in other sports, right? But look, trust me when I tell you guys, they get reviewed and disciplined on a regular basis from the state athletic commissions, as well as the sanctioning organizations. That's their job. But listen to this.
Let me say this real quick, Joe. I think it's a good idea. If you have the referees come talk, but I think then we'll be pushing the button a little bit too much, because then, you know, everybody will always want the referees to come talk if they don't feel like, oh, their fighter got the scorecard. So I think we should just leave it like it is, because like you say, you've been in the business 20 years. You know, Joe, that these guys get reprimanded if the scorecard is atrocious, or so you know that.
Well, yeah, and look, honestly, there's a reason why a guy like Teddy Atlas no longer works for ESPN and is behind the mic.
Why is that?
Because, well, ESPN got sick and tired of hearing this guy talk about corruption in the sport anytime the judges saw the fight differently than him. Keep in mind, guys, these judges are set up on one side of the ring, right? And so a lot of times a judge, if the fight action is on the opposite side of the ring and a fighter's back is facing him, he doesn't have the greatest view, right? And so that's why a lot of times they will score rounds differently than the guy next to them on the other side of the ring. This is an imperfect practice, in my opinion, Karray. And once again, one of the benefits of being at ringside, you can feel the torque of the shot. If a guy is landing or throwing the more explosive, consequential punches, you can feel the effects from ringside. Like, you can feel the impact of the shot. And you can tell dramatically who's throwing the harder, more impactful shots. You can't tell that through your TV screen, brother, at least not as drastically. So I was going to say possibly, maybe you have three judges at ringside like you do now, and have 2 judges watching it through monitors with all of the cameras around the ring. So you get the best angle. But with that said, those two guys watching from monitors, they don't get the full torque of all the shots. Like if you guys have ever been ringside to an event, and I'm assuming some of you have, a lot of you have, I'm sure. Boy, you can feel the punches. You can feel the thud of the leather. You understand who's throwing the harder, more impactful shots, right? Again, once again, though, this is not a perfect science. This is not an exact science, and this is a subjective process, scoring a prize fight. But is it a product of corruption? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, guys. And once again, if you go to any local or regional club show, talk to these judges. Talk to them. Find out what's their process in scoring a prize fight. They'll be more than happy to talk to fans, right?
Yep.
But with that said, guys, let's move on. If you have any questions or comments, please let them go. Please fire them up. We'll answer and show any of your comments on the screen. Thank you for joining us, guys. And once again, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on this War Week Radio show. Karray, it was just reported by the same guy, Mike Coppinger. Well, first of all, before we move forward, let me just tell you, it's funny. Mike Coppinger, and this is the problem, right? When it goes back to this is the last thing I'm going to say about the scoring. And once again, feces rolls downhill. Fans regurgitate this same ideology and the same sentiment, influenced by these guys. This is what Mike Coppinger said immediately in his post-fight write-up from San Antonio. He said this: Charlo Castano was a stirring battle for supremacy at 154 pounds. Two elite fighters. The rematch is necessary after that controversial draw, but will we get it? Hold on. No, that was the wrong one. Hold on. Let me find it. Okay, here it is. From ringside in San Antonio, Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano battled to a draw in one of the best fights in 2021. Unfortunately, it's overshadowed by poor judging. Not only was the 117-111 scorecard egregious, I believe Castano clearly won. Okay, well, how is it a robbery or egregious if you just said in the sentence before that it was one of the best fights of 2021? You can't have it both ways, dude. Is it a robbery or is it one of the best fights of 2021?
But talk that shit, Joe.
I'm sorry, you can't. It's once again, and these bozos think it's a more intelligent way of looking at the sport by consistently shitting all over it. Quite the contrary, brother. It means you don't know shit. You don't know anything about the process. Dude, instead of sucking up to Al Heyman, instead of sucking up to Leonard Ellerby, why don't you interview one of these judges? They're very accessible. Talk to them. Ask them what the criteria is. Ask them what their process is. They're transparent, and they have to be. It's part of their job. They have to explain any kind of odd scorecard to the State Athletic Commission. That's part of the process. They will regularly be monitored and disciplined. And if you have too many consecutive odd scorecards, they will demote you back down to scoring fights on the amateur level or scoring fights at the regional and club level. That's part of the process, guys. And this is the same for referees as well. Ask Russell Mora. Go back almost 10 years ago when Abner Mares had that low blow festival against Joseph King Kong Agbeko, right? In their first fight together, in which he landed like 25 shots south of the border. What happened after that? Well, they demoted him, and they actually suspended his license. He couldn't referee a major event until the following year. And they do the same thing to judges if they have too many consecutive odd scorecards. Guys, Once again, this is an imperfect process, and it's a very subjective one. But the state athletic commissions, they do discipline these judges. So once again, guys, start appreciating this. Start giving the sport the benefit of the doubt. And once again, even the mob back in the day, they knew that they couldn't rig fights. Because if they did, the fans would catch on to it, and the fans would stop supporting it financially. They would stop buying tickets. They would lose interest in the sport. Even the mob did that back in the day. So rather than rig fights, what did they do? Well, they just like promoters today, will hoard all of the champions, as many as they can. And if you want to fight their champion, boy, you're going to have to give them options on your next 3 or 4 fights. The mob came up with that, guys, back in the 40s and 50s, and promoters still use that today, right? All of the practices that we see today, the mob came up with back in the day. Mm-hmm. Is it legal? Is it illegal? No. Is it right? Probably not. But once again, it's not illegal.
But you know, it's business. They doing what's best for their business. And
it's business. It's no different than Al Heyman, right? Demanding from Canelo, saying, "Hey, man, if you want to fight my champion, my IBF champion, Caleb Plant, well, you're going to have to fight on PBC Fox over here, right? You're going to have to fight on my platform, and I'm going to be the lead promoter, right? If you want this fight, you're going to have to do that." And it seems that that's exactly what's taking place. Guys, it was just reported today, once again, by Mike Coppinger, that Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant are in the process of finalizing a deal for September 18th, about set to take place in Vegas, possibly at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, and it's going to be televised and distributed by PBC on Fox pay-per-view. That will, in essence, crown an undisputed super middleweight champion for the very first time in the 4-belt era, right? Now, once again, we were very pessimistic. We were skeptical that this was actually going to happen. Karray, are you surprised that this looks like it's going to take place, Canelo versus Plant, on PBC Fox pay-per-view?
I'm kind of a little surprised about that, because Eddie Hearn, you know, with him having Canelo, the biggest fighter on the planet, you know, in my opinion, business-wise, it would have been best for him to make sure they get this fight on the zone. But that's the only thing I'm surprised about. But
well, also, I was very skeptical because Canelo favors Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Sport to be the lead promoter on all of his events from this point forward. Now, because of the exclusivity of his contract with DAZN, he is not going to be able to promote an event on PBC Fox. So he couldn't be the lead promoter even if he wanted to. He is merely, in this situation, acting as an advisor and brokering the deal for Canelo Alvarez, Team Canelo. So how did this happen? Well, from what I've been told, the only reason why this is going to be taking place on PBC Fox, and I have no idea where they got the money, but according to what I've been told, Canelo will be receiving a career-high payday over $40 million guaranteed.
Jesus.
I don't know where they're getting the money. Jesus. But so that means, guys, instead of paying just $100 a year for your DAZN subscription, we're more than likely going to have to be paying $100 for this single event on September 18th. How do you feel about that, Karray?
It's hard to kind of feel a certain type of way about it, because in two aspects, like, yeah, I would love to watch it on the zone, when we pay $100 a year. But then in another aspect, that's Canelo Alvarez. It ain't like this is no fighter, this ain't no situation where you putting just like a regular guy out there on pay-per-view. This Canelo Alvarez. And he going for undisputed. So it makes sense.
Well, this is what sucks about it, man. And I can't believe that there are some fans that are celebrating the fact that this is going to be on PBC Fox. I'm sorry. Do you like paying $100 for a single event?
Oh no, I don't. I hate the fact.
No, not you, not you. I'm talking to these fans. Do they like paying $100 for a single event? Like, why are they celebrating that this is going to be taking place on PBC Fox? I can't understand. That's, to me, that just says that these guys aren't paying for these events. Because who in their right mind wants to pay for the same fight $80 more money than what it would cost to see it on DAZN? Why? I can't understand that to save my life. Like, it's obvious that the guys who are celebrating don't purchase these events and are going to stream this illegally. $100 is what I'm being told it's going to cost, just because it's such a huge guaranteed purse. $40 million. Now, what? This is going to be a career high payday for Canelo. How well do you think this is going to do, Karray?
I mean, it's Canelo, so, and it's undisputed.
But it's Caleb Plant.
I know it's Caleb Plant. That's, so I don't know. I don't know, Joe. I really don't know.
This is not Canelo versus Spence. This is not Canelo versus Oscar De La Hoya. This is not Canelo versus Conor McGregor. I can't see how they're going to make their money back. I know it's Canelo Alvarez. He's obviously the biggest draw of the sport, or in North America, right? He's the biggest draw in North America. Mm-hmm. But no one is purchasing these events, only mainstream and casuals. In my opinion, Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley is going to do better.
Wow. I agree
because it appeals to more mainstream and casual fans, which is the only demographic currently purchasing these events. Look, pay-per-view platform is in a sad state when they're currently celebrating Gervonta Davis, touting him as the next big star of boxing, and he's only doing less than 200,000 purchases. I'm sorry, man, but 200,000 purchases back in the day was considered a flop.
True.
But piracy is such a huge issue, guys. I'll be very surprised if this does over 1 million purchases at $100 a pop. This is not good. This is not good for the sport of boxing. I know it's on a much wider recognized platform like Fox, but once again, it's being obscured on the pay-per-view platform. If this were on free Fox, I would say, my word, this is going to do between 15 and 20 million viewers, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not. I'll be very surprised if this reaches close to 1 million, right?
So, Joseph.
Once again, guys, this is Caleb Plant. Yeah. No one knows who Caleb Plant is. He's a virtual unknown outside of the diehard boxing community.
Yeah.
So now we're going to have to pay $100 to see the same fight that would have been just $20 on DAZN. Thanks a lot, Al Heyman.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al Heyman.
Oh man,
Ching got that, dude. Oh my gosh.
Hey, Joe. So you saying it's reported that Canelo gonna get 40 million? So
that's what I've been told. That's what I've been told. It hasn't been reported yet, and the price tag hasn't been reported yet. But this is what I'm being told, right? Mm-hmm. And I trust these guys, right? They've been right every single time up to this point. Like, I was very pessimistic. I didn't think that this fight was going to happen on PBC Fox because there really wasn't a need to. DAZN was willing to offer Canelo $35 million for this fight. I thought, okay, well, it's going to happen on DAZN. No way is Haymon going to be able to come up with that kind of money on Fox in his final year of this contract, and he's already paying through the nose for Pacquiao Spence. He's already paying Deontay Wilder's absurd $20 million purse for his fight in October for Wilder versus Fury 3. How on earth is he going to be able to afford this? Tell you what, man, credit to him for coming up with the resources to fund this thing, but who's ultimately going to be paying for it?
Us, the real
fans,
bosses of boxing.
The real bosses of boxing.
Your thoughts what's funny to me?
Before we actually start sizing up this matchup, Karray?
Yeah, this is what pissed me off with Al Haymon, right? They always do stuff when it's time to appeal to get the audience. Like when they put the big card, they had that big year when Mayweather fought Canelo. That year was big. Now in a contract year, we seeing all these big fights. What about in between? Everybody not looking at in between, how they did us in between them fights.
Look,
and the only reason why he putting on these big fights is because it's a contract year.
So Peter, is this the official odds, the official line coming out from odds makers and sports books? Because I haven't seen that yet. So he's saying Canelo is listed as a minus 600. Plant is a plus 400 heading into this event. Wow. If that's the case, thank you for that, Peter. If that's the case, why is this $100? Guys, this isn't, this is an undisputed unification bout in which two champions are going to be squaring off. But once again, look at the market value. If you're wondering what determines the price tag for all of these events, it's the market value. I'm sorry, but Caleb Plant, his market value isn't very high. This is a virtual unknown to most mainstream and casual audiences. They couldn't tell you. If they saw him walking down the street, they couldn't tell you who he was. Right? So why is this going to be $100 on pay-per-view? Why is this going to be $100 on pay-per-view? Chingao, dude. I guess Haymon thinks it's worth it to be able to promote all of his other fighters, his young up-and-coming, Sebastian Fundora is going to be on this, right? David Benavidez is going to be featured on the undercard of this. All of his top prospects are going to be featured on the undercard of this. I guess Haymon thinks it's worth that much money to get his best prospects that kind of exposure in front of a new mainstream audience, right?
That's smart, though.
But is it worth that much money? And this is a huge guaranteed purse, man.
No, it's not. I mean, it's horrible for us, but it's good for his fighters. Like it's horrible for us as fans that we'll have to pay $100 instead of $20, especially the way the economy is right now through the pandemic. That that's a gut. That's like getting hit in the gut. They making us pay $100 for this fight, but I think it's great. For guys like Fundora, David Benavidez, guys who are up and coming, rising stars, to get that good look like that.
Okay, well, and I can see where Peter got this. Thank you for giving us those odds, Peter. I appreciate it. He got that from OddsShark, right? The first major sports book to put forth a betting line, right? So do you agree with those odds, Karray? Let's talk about this. Do you agree with those odds? Let's break this style matchup down. Let's break this fight up. Let's pick apart this matchup. Do you agree with those betting odds? Canelo being a big 6-1 betting favorite.
I think it should be higher.
See, that's where we disagree. I actually think Plant is going to be prove to be the most difficult fight of any of the champions that he's fought at 168 pounds. Caleb Plant is a specimen. Unfortunately, he's catching Canelo at the wrong time. Caleb Plant is largely inactive. He's a guy who hasn't fought nearly that level of competition. I mean, since winning the title against Usyk several years ago, he's fought Mike Lee, Vincent Feigenbutz, Caleb Truax. Oh my gosh, man. I mean, dude, he is in the immortal words of Teddy Atlas, he's jumping from the wading pool into the ocean. Oh my word. I mean, this is so I will say this. Canelo is catching this guy at the right time. He's largely inactive and he's very green to this level of competition.
Yeah.
But go ahead,
you're making my point, Joe. It's like them names who he fought. And he finna go in here and fight a Canelo 6-1. This should be 20-1. I don't see this guy, having a chance against Canelo. Like when it comes to how you explained to me about big time boxing, you have to have the right preparation to get you ready for a moment like this in the big time matchup. If we look at Caleb Plant and look at his resume and really break it down, he don't have the preparation in the resume that could make me think that Caleb Plant is going to give Canelo any type of problems, give him any trouble, or like he's going to put on a better performance than Billy Joe Saunders did. I just don't see it.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
No, I just see Canelo wiping this guy out. Because I don't think his the fights, like you say, Mike Lee, a former football player, I think that's him, and even when he was fighting Usyk, Usyk was giving him a little problems, and this is Canelo, like 6-1, like that. I think that's disrespectful to Canelo to even have him 6-1. It should be 10-1. This ain't gonna be close, Joe.
Well, there's where we disagree, my friend, because honestly, I think Caleb Plant, and once again, let me read off the tail of the tape for Caleb Sweet Hands Plant. Caleb is age 29. He fights out of the orthodox stance. He stands 6'1" tall in the center of the ring. He fights behind a 74-inch reach from Nashville, Tennessee, the country music capital of the world. He comes into the ring with a perfect record of 21 wins, 0 losses, 12 big wins coming by way of knockout. This is why it's going to be a very competitive fight. Because Caleb Plant, not only is he a big, strong, natural 168-pound fighter, he's got some of the best reflexes in boxing, a lot like Canelo Alvarez. Unless you close the distance on him, it's very difficult to hit him cleanly. He is a very fast, very smart fighter. Excellent footwork, excellent reflexes, excellent hand speed. And I tell you what, give him 2 or 3 more years, he may be able to beat Canelo Alvarez. Unfortunately, though, because of his lack of big fight experience, I think it's going to be the determining factor. But guys, don't be surprised if this fight resembles the Danny Jacobs fight, in which Canelo had a hard time finding range and it went to a 12-round decision. So my prediction, I think Canelo's going to win this fight, but it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be very competitive throughout. I'm predicting a Canelo 12-round UD.
I mean, yeah, that's a great prediction. I just, look at a guy like Caleb Plant, and it just make me wonder, because it's big to me on pedigree, right? Like he could be 21-0 with 12 knockouts. Like he is the goods, because you
Mm-hmm.
can't just become champion. You have to earn that. And Caleb Plant has earned that. He has, like you say, excellent reflexes in the ring. He could do a lot of great things in the ring. But like on this level, in this big time matchup against a guy like Canelo, like he it's to me, this is just gonna be easy work for Canelo. Because look, Joe, this fight right here remind me of when Canelo fought Floyd Mayweather. I think that's exactly how this fight gonna look. And we talk about Caleb Plant. This guy isn't no youngster. Like Caleb Plant is 29 years old,
That's
and
right.
this is his first big time matchup.
Yep.
Like,
Hey,
geez,
blame his promoter, brother. Blame his promoter.
geez, this is first big. Like I'm telling everybody, this is my opinion. And like I say, Joseph know the game more than me. He's been in the business longer than I have. But this is my honest opinion. I think
Mhm.
this fight is going to resemble Floyd Mayweather versus the younger 22-year-old Canelo, and he beat him, and he beat him every round easily.
Well, we'll see what happens, brother. Let's just hope there isn't I'm sorry, her name eludes me. The one who scored the fight for Canelo Alvarez, a draw. You remember that? What's her
Yeah,
name?
yeah.
Do you remember the name of
Um,
that judge?
what was her name?
I'm sorry,
Adelaide.
C.J.
Was it
Ross.
CJ Ross? Yeah.
Let's just hope there is no C.J. Ross present, right?
What you think about Canelo calling Brian Castano and telling him he won the fight?
I
He
think that
called
that's
Brian,
great. I
but
think that's great. I think
you know,
it's great. Canelo calls him up and he says, "Hey, man, keep your chin up. I felt you won that
you
fight. Get him in the rematch."
you know what's crazy about that though too? It's like,
Ah,
even if Canelo was, crying or complaining about Texas judging, I can go back to one of his fights when he fought Austin Trout, and it because it's open scoring, and they told us the score after what? How did they do open scoring, Joe? Like after
oh,
four rounds?
I couldn't stand. I could not stand WBC open scoring. Like it just took
Yeah,
all the drama out of the event.
and it's like because that fight with Austin Trout was way more closer, in my
Yeah, it was a
opinion.
lot more competitive. Yeah, it was a lot more competitive than the
Yeah,
judges' scorecards. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, we'll see, guys. But I tell you what, I hope this fight gets made for September 18th. It's going to be a great event, and it's going to be in Vegas. From what I'm hearing, the T-Mobile Arena is going to be the host of this event. Leave your comments, guys, on the comment board. Who do you think is going to win this fight, and why? Do you think Caleb Plant is going to have a better showing than Billy Joe Saunders or Callum Smith, or do you think it's going to play out the exact same way? Let us know how you feel, guys. We'll be more than happy to talk about your comments on this upcoming
Hey, can I ask you
super
a quick
fight.
question, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Have Caleb Plant ever had his chin tested like Canelo gonna test it?
No. Big N-O. But I don't think it's going to come to that because and there's a reason why he really hasn't had his chin tested. Because once again, Caleb Plant is blessed with that superb radar, just like Canelo Alvarez. Unless you close that distance and fight him in a phone booth, the key to hitting Caleb Plant flush is cutting off that reaction time. Just like Canelo Alvarez, all the success that Saunders had, right, in landing clean shots in their last fight was at close range. Good luck hitting Canelo with that superb radar from mid to long range. It isn't going to happen. Just ask Callum Smith. You have to close the distance on both guys. Canelo Alvarez understands that the strategy he has to implement on this. Here is a comment from our brother Mohammed. Good to hear from you, Mohammed. He says, hello, Joseph. I think the draw was fair due to the fact that Charlo underperformed and Castano did better than expected. The rematch will be huge. And once again, that is a great, insightful comment. Thank you, Mohammed. Let me leave that up there for just a second. Because once again, Karray, what happens if the fans, the real bosses of boxing, feel that Castano got jobbed? If it's a draw, right?
Yeah.
Does his stock diminish in the minds of the real bosses of boxing?
Oh, no. It goes up.
Absolutely not. It increases, making an eventual rematch much, much bigger. You're absolutely right, Mohammed. The rematch will be huge. Sign it up. Thank you for joining us this evening, brother.
And Mohammed, that was a great assessment, but let me clarify something. It isn't that Jermell Charlo underperformed. It's just that Castano is a good fighter, and a lot of people who didn't know Castano didn't know that until they saw him fight against Jermell Charlo. So I wouldn't say that Jermell Charlo underperformed. It's just that Castano was that good.
You know what? That's a very good point. In terms of underperforming, I'm gonna stick up for my brother Muhammad here. In terms of Charlo potentially underperforming, it means that he's got more tools in the box than he used on that night. Was that a product of Brian Castano hurting him early in the third round? Him being turning Charlo into a more tentative version of himself? Was it the product of him outgrowing the 154-pound weight division, being a 6-foot fighter and age 31? Possibly. Hopefully we get the answers to all of these questions in a rematch. In my opinion, Charlo has and this is where I'm sticking up for Muhammad, he has the skills, the tools to improve upon his performance. In my opinion, Brian Castano, he fought a perfect fight, and from what he's capable of doing, I can't see him improving upon his performance this past Saturday. So if anyone's going to be able, if anyone's going to be able to improve upon this, I think it's Charlo. So your thoughts? You think Brian Castano can fight
absolutely.
an even more effective fight under rematch?
Absolutely, because guess what? He came in there against the unified champion, and he took everything that that unified champion threw at him. And Castano came out with the public thinking he won this fight. So him going into training camp, coming into the rematch, he's going to be more confident than ever. So I agree with your point on Charlo, that Charlo could be a lot better, but I also think that Castano could be a whole lot better because he went in there against a guy who was more proven, whose resume shows that he has fought every type of style that could be fought in the top of the 154-pound division in boxing in Jermell Charlo, and he withstood that, and he came, out, with the public, the majority of the public thinking he won. So absolutely, I think Castano could get better and learn from this, because he's going to see a lot of mistakes he made and how he was rushing his shots when he had Charlo on the rope. That showed his inexperience in big time boxing championship fights, because you have to understand, Joe, because you preached this to me. Big time boxing. This was his really first moment in a big time boxing. I'm not saying Laura and the fight the championship fight.
No, you're absolutely right. This was the biggest stage of boxing the biggest event that he's ever been a part of. You're absolutely right. And I will say this, I think you're right in certain aspects where Brian Castano, he would be much wiser the next time around by fighting and closing the distance behind an intelligent jab. Like, he didn't really use the jab very often to close the distance. He merely used that high guard defense, not really giving Charlo much to think about as he was closing in, right? But Charlo, and I think Coach Derek James is absolutely right when he says he made this fight a lot more difficult than it had to be, right? Where Charlo did not work behind the jab. Well, let's go by the comments of our brother Joe Strummer. Thank you for joining us tonight, Joe. He says, was Charlo weight drained? He looked out of it. My point exactly, my friend. Thank you, brother. I personally think that one of the reasons why he wasn't able to capitalize when hurting Castano clearly in the 10th round was because he was questioning his own conditioning. That he was depleted from killing himself trying to make 154 pounds. Keep in mind, guys, at the weigh-in, I was there. He looked emaciated. He weighed in at 153 pounds. When you're talking about a guy who's 31 years of age and 6 foot, okay, that your metabolism naturally changes. I don't care if you're a gym rat and you stay in constant shape all year round, 24/7, 365. You get to that age, your metabolism naturally slows. In my opinion, he has outgrown this weight division. That's why he was a lot more tentative when he had the golden opportunity to put this guy on his ass for good in the 10th round. He obviously had Brian Castano walking on feathers.
But Joe,
I know I was there.
But
Go
Joe,
ahead,
you
sir.
know, when you on this elite level, it's hard to get the knockout. You preach that to me all the time.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
It's hard to
is.
like you preach that to me all the time, and I truly 100% believe that when you on this elite level, it's hard to get the knockout. And I know you made that statement, Joe. Like, you don't care if they in shape all year round, but I do, because that show the professionalism of a fighter and how he takes his job seriously. When we talk about guys like Earl Spence, who fighting at 147 and he gets up to 185, 190, and then he have to kill himself to get down to 147, that's a problem. I'm telling you, I dealt with Charlo personally, just like you have, just like you. And you dealt with the Charlos way before I did. You know,
with Coach Ronnie Shields.
Yeah, when you and Ronnie Shields used to do y'all show, so you know more just like I know that them guys are dedicated to the sport. So yeah.
Yep, you know what? You're absolutely right. He's a gym rat. They are gym rats, both Charlo brothers.
So, Joe, I'm telling you, man, you rubbing off on me like everything you tell me. Just like even about big time boxing, like Castano, that was his first time on big time boxing, Joe. Like, and he's gonna get better. You got to understand when I saying down here in Texas, they say the stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas. And Joe, them stars were shining bright on Castano Saturday night.
You know what, Karray, I'll say this is the very first time I've ever heard Deep in the Heart of Texas sung by Teddy Pendergrass. Come on, brother. You got what I need. Holy shit, brother. You missed your calling, brother. You could have been a Motown singer, bro.
I'm just saying though, like the light, but Joe, the lights were shining bright on Castano. And when you get in that big time boxing and get in that moment like that, you might not know how to handle it.
So let me ask you something. I'm gonna give you two scenarios, right? Is he closer to Sergio Martinez, another Argentine, or Marcos Maidana in an eventual rematch. Now, I'm referring to Sergio Martinez's rematch with Paul Williams. He obviously did much better, stopping Paul Williams in dramatic fashion with that one-punch knockout. Or do you think he's going to come up short like Marcos Maidana did in his rematch with Floyd Mayweather?
No,
Your thoughts?
I absolutely think he's in the Sergio Martinez situation. Not saying that he's going to knock out Jermell Charlo, but when I seen that fight, it was so tick for tack. I can't say that he's going to come out and be the loser like Maidana was clearly against Floyd Mayweather in the second. I give him a hell of an opportunity to knock Jermell Charlo out, especially the way he hurt Jermell Charlo numerous times in that fight.
Well, I tell you what, let's just hope we get to see it play out in real time later this year. Rather than, my biggest fear is we're going to get Jermell Charlo defending his title against his mandatory challenger, Erickson Lubin, instead. That's my biggest fear. And then we're going to see Brian Castano defend his title, WBO title, against his number one ranked challenger in the WBO, Tim Tszyu. Right?
And you know what, Joseph? I'm not mad at that if that happened. You know, I'm not mad at these guys. Like, no. And you know the reason why I'm not mad at it if it happened? Because these guys right here, they fought. This was a hard fight. Like, this was a brutal collision between Jermell Charlo and Castano. Do I want the Knicks? Absolutely. Heck yeah, I want the Knicks 100%. But I wouldn't be mad if these guys fight they mandatory next. Then we see this fight in
No,
2022.
dude, no. I will be very disappointed if we don't see an immediate rematch. Guys, the real bosses of boxing demand it. Okay, that's it. The real bosses of boxing demand it. Let's go to Joe Sturmer. He says Charlo is 32. Actually, he's 31. He needs to move up. He can get brain damage.
Huh?
Well, if he stays at 154 pounds, you know what, brother? I think this is going to be his last fight. If he does do the immediate rematch which I think he's going to do, that's the biggest money fight available for him at 154 pounds. I think they're going to do an immediate rematch, and he's going to immediately move up afterwards because I think he has outgrown the division. Let's go back to Canelo Plant talk. Our brother Muhammad, he says, with respect to Canelo versus Plant, I can't see anybody beating Canelo. Too many tools in the toolbox. You know what, brother? That is a very astute observation. And what makes Canelo so special is not only has he added the new wrinkle of being able to close the distance, cut off the ring, and fight in the pocket effectively, it's very difficult to anticipate where he's going to throw punches. He is the most creative combination puncher in boxing. It's very difficult to defend against. Just ask Callum Smith. Just ask Gennady Golovkin. Just ask Billy Joe Saunders. This is a guy who mixes up his punches extremely well. And boy, he's explosive, combining speed with power. And now that he's able to work consistently at 168 pounds, not taking breaks between offensive spurts, he is the most dangerous puncher in the division. I think it's going to be a great fight. I can't wait to see it. But yeah, he'll have to shorten that reaction time of Caleb Plant to be effective. Caleb Plant has some of the best reflexes in boxing. This is a guy who's an athletic specimen. But, boy, he's going to be jumping from the wading pool into the ocean. This is going to be a very difficult outing for Caleb Plant. Guys, I can't wait to see it. But in additional boxing news, it was just announced today from Matchroom Sport. We're going to finally see Anthony Joshua versus Oleksandr Usyk on September 25th at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, right? This is for all the marbles with the exception of the WBC title, right? In the heavyweight division. And there's been a lot of talk about this, Karray. Is Usyk too small to be considered an elite level heavyweight?
Absolutely not. You know, if you've seen what he did at cruiserweight, absolutely not.
Hold on. Before we move forward with this, Karray, hold that thought, please. I just have to give this one mention from our brother Joe Strummer. Caleb Plant is the Vanilla Ice of boxing. Dun 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 dun. I'm just going to leave that up there for a second because that's awesome. Oh, Chingal. Thanks for that, Big Joe. Mohammed says, going back to Charlo Castano, he says, if Charlo stays off the ropes, gets the jab going and throws combinations here and there, he should get the W. I'm in full agreement with that. I think you're absolutely right. And I think Derek James was absolutely right in his assessment, claiming that his fighter made this outing a lot more difficult than it had to be. In my opinion, Jermell, just like you stated about Canelo, has more tools in the toolbox. And he left them there this past Saturday night, not utilizing all of his athletic gifts, all of the years of experience that he has, on tutelage of both Ronnie Shields as well as Derek James. He should have used footwork, trying a lot harder to keep the fight in the center of the ring. But once again, he already knows this. Which leads me to my final point. Yes, I truly believe Charlo has outgrown this division. One of the reasons why he was on the ropes consistently is because he didn't have the conditioning. He was questioning his conditioning the entire night. That's why he didn't let his hands grow in regularity either. Very good point, brother. So Joe Strummer asked, Joseph, who's the face of boxing in your opinion? In my opinion, and you're not going to like this one bit, brother, if you're talking about mainstream attractions, in my opinion, the biggest attractions in boxing currently are 2 YouTubers and 2 retired fighters.
Damn, YouTubers?
Yep. I think the biggest attractions in boxing currently to the mainstream and casual demographic.
Explain this to me, Joe.
Are Jake and Logan Paul, as well as Mayweather and Mike Tyson. Prove me wrong, guys. When you look at their numbers on pay-per-view, they're crushing it compared to everybody else. Prove me wrong. Hooray, prove me wrong.
I can't.
Dude, that sucks. It sucks. I know it sucks for all the diehards, all the purists, right? But that's the sad reality, guys. Jake Paul, look at how much mainstream ink he gets. When is the last time you've seen Canelo interviewed on TMZ or ESPN or Entertainment Tonight? Guess what? We've seen Jake Paul recently being interviewed on all 3 of those mediums, all 3 of those platforms. And why? Because he's got that mainstream juice. They love that story. It's like this guy is the face of boxing currently for a lot of sports fans. When you consider over the past 2 years, the biggest grossing pay-per-view events have been Jake Paul, Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather, and Mike Tyson. Yeah, that doesn't bode well for anyone else in the sport of boxing. Now, keep in mind, guys, I am just considering North America, the American fight market. Obviously, in the UK, Anthony Joshua is hands down the biggest draw in boxing, right? This guy can pack it in 80,000 strong at Wembley, right? He is the biggest breadwinner in the UK. He is the biggest attraction in the sport. He has all of the mainstream sponsorship to prove it. But in America, yup, YouTubers, guys. YouTubers. Oh, dude, holy shnikes. So Joe Strummer adds Canelo versus Jake Paul next. Perish the thought, brother. Canelo would never do that. Ever. And God bless him for it, man. We still want to see real fights.
So Canelo wouldn't do that for $100 million?
Right now, no, he wouldn't, because he doesn't need Jake Paul to make money. He is still like when you're talking about real fighters and you're talking about real matchups in North America, hands down, Canelo Alvarez is the biggest attraction in boxing, right? And right now, when he doesn't need those guys to make money, yeah, he will never do that, ever. Canelo has too much integrity and too much reverence to the sport of boxing, the sport that made him a multimillionaire, right? He would never do that. And once again, if he wants to get that same adoration that Julio Cesar Chavez enjoyed when he was an active fighter, how do you think the Mexican fight fans would react to him fighting in a circus event opposite one of the Paul brothers?
I think they'll love it because they'll want to see him knock out Jake Paul.
Well, see, that's where you're getting a little confused. You're an American fight fan. You would love to see that shit. Mexican fight fans,
you right,
dude, they would think of that as being like, it would be the equivalent of saying, say it ain't so, Joe. They would look at it as, oh my gosh, I can't believe Canelo is stooping to this level. Mexican fight fans, Mexican nationals especially, they're cut from a different cloth. Like when Canelo ditched his WBC title, threw it in the trash to avoid Gennady Golovkin several years ago, half a decade ago, they thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe a Mexican champion is relinquishing his title to avoid someone else. That is just as bad as quitting on your stool to Mexican fight fans. You don't do that. You don't do that. Julio Cesar Chavez never did that. Salvador Sanchez never did that. See, you don't do that. That's something that is going to that's going to take a while before Mexican fight fans forget about all of that, Karray. That's going to take a while.
I agree. You're right.
But I tell you what, you and I would love to see Canelo level this YouTuber and finally shut his mouth. You and I would love to see that. But I tell you what, going back to Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk, right? In my opinion, this is a much more difficult outing for Anthony Joshua. A lot of people seem to think he's just too big, too strong, too experienced to not wipe up the floor with Alexander Usyk. And my point is, who the hell has ever done that? As an amateur or a professional, who has ever had their way with Alexander Usyk? Especially someone who depends on range and distance. Keep in mind, guys, Anthony Joshua is not a guy like Derek Chisora who will smother his opponent and constantly apply that hard pressure, right? Anthony Joshua is a guy who likes to fight from mid to long range and work behind that jab. In my opinion, Alexander Usyk is a much more problematic outing than Deontay Wilder is for Tyson Fury at this time.
That's a dangerous fight, Joe.
That is a dangerous fight, but so is this. Alexander Usyk is a technician. If you give him space and room to work, just like Anthony Joshua will on September 25th, if you're not careful, he can perform surgery on you. And how do you spar for someone like Alexander Usyk, Karray? How do you spar for someone like that?
It's tough because, like, he more of a well-rounded fighter than Anthony Joshua is. Like, so it's tough. Like, he do a lot of things better than Anthony Joshua. I think he do everything better than Anthony Joshua, except have power like Anthony Joshua.
Yep. Keep in mind, guys.
Anthony Joshua would do a lot of things good, though. I just think Alexander is more seasoned.
Joe Strubber says Usyk will run and trip all over the ring. My point is, when have you ever seen that? When have you ever seen Usyk perform less than advertised? Okay, so once again, the initial betting line. Peter, thank you, brother, for sticking with us. And thank you for giving us the odds this evening, man. We appreciate it. Joshua, keep in mind, Karray, the odds makers see it like I do. Keep in mind, Canelo versus Plant is wider odds for this fight. And why? Because Usyk is a marksman. He's a technician. He is one of the smartest fighters, if not the smartest fighter in boxing currently. This guy will pick you apart from start to finish if you allow it. And Joshua loves to sit back. He loves to fight from mid to long range. He loves to fight from a distance. That is all wrong when facing a guy like Alexander Usyk. If you give him room to work, he's going to use his footwork to move in and out. He's going to feint you. And when you're a counterpuncher like Anthony Joshua, you're not going to know when to let your hands go or get off. In my opinion, this is going to be a very difficult fight for Anthony Joshua. Do I think Anthony Joshua is going to win? Yes, because he's the one who's going to be throwing the harder, more impactful shots. Do I think he's going to stop him? No. I think Alexander Usyk is going to make it to the finish line, but I think Joshua's harder, more effective, and consequential punches are going to be the difference. But trust me, brother, this is not an easy fight for Anthony Joshua. This is not an easy fight at all.
I agree with you 100%. I think the hardest shots is going to be what prevail for Joshua. I think even if Alexander Usyk if he's doing good early in the round, Joshua's going to hit him with something that's going to hurt him, and Joshua's going to be able to have his way with him for the rest of the round. So I agree with you. I think Joshua going to win this fight, and I think it could be a possible stoppage, 9th or 10th round.
That very well could happen if he lands successfully and he catches Usyk coming in. Well, it's going to be very difficult, though. But, yeah, I like Joshua in this fight just because he's the bigger, stronger, harder puncher. And you look at his big fight experience. Very poised. Nothing seems to really faze this guy. And, yeah, but I tell you what. Okay, let's see this. Joe Strummer says, I think this fight will be like Pac versus Mayweather, but only with heavyweights. To be honest with you, brother, and thank you for that comment, Joe. Who would be Pac? Who would be Mayweather, Karray?
I think he's trying to say Alexander Usyk is going to be Mayweather and Joshua going to be Pacquiao. I think that's what he's saying. Because I look at Alexander Usyk as the better boxer, better skillful guy. Like Anthony Joshua is very skilled. I just think Alexander Usyk is more skilled than him. So I would say he would say Mayweather is Alexander Usyk and Pacquiao is Joshua, I think.
I don't know about that, because when you look at Alexander Usyk, he's going to be the guy who's going to have to come forward. He's given up a lot of height. He's given up a lot of reach. He's the guy who's going to be having to come forward and move in and out of range like a needle, right? Anthony Joshua is merely going to be staying there, trying to catch him as he's coming in. That's what's going to cause problems for Joshua. This is a guy that you cannot wait on. If I were Anthony Joshua's trainer, I would say move forward, press this guy, let your hands go with regularity, and be the predator in the ring. Do not wait on a guy like Alexander Usyk, or he will carve you like a Thanksgiving turkey. He will use his brilliant footwork to move in and out of range and then turn you once he lets his hands go. He will throw a combination to the body and head and pivot around you and stay right there in your chest. This is a very difficult fight, guys, for Anthony Joshua. It's a fight he can win, but it won't be easy, in my opinion. I think Tyson Fury has a much easier time against Deontay Wilder than Joshua has against Usyk. Karray, we're already an hour and 40 minutes in. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss before we
know. I just want to give a quick shout out to my new favorite fighter, Rolly Romero.
Oh boy. Okay. All right, brother. You had to do that, didn't you? So that means you want to stay on the air for a couple more minutes, because you know I'm not going to let that go untested. Rolly Romero. Guys, anyone who judges anyone who trusts what they see in the ring, right? And I always recommend this to all of our very intelligent fight fans, right? Trust what you see in the ring. Your eyes don't deceive you, okay? And my eyes from ringside tell me that Rolly is so bad that he's almost entertaining. And he can't fight, Karray. Like, he's calling out guys like Tank Davis, Devin Haney. Brother, you are nowhere near that level. Like, dude, he should just still play the heel, play the guy that everyone loves to hate. He's got something there, right?
Yeah.
But in no way, shape, or form is he on that level. He needs to stay at this level, fighting bums, fighting guys who don't have any power. Because when he steps up in competition, he's going to be embarrassed. And why? Because he can't fight, Karray. He can't fight. I'm sorry, dude. His skill level. Dude, I know regional talent that has better skills than Rolly Romero. He's a strong kid who can punch, but he can't fight. And, dude, I'm sorry. When I was at ringside, I thought I was watching Serena Williams. Every time he would throw a punch, he choreographs it by not only rearing back and telling you when he's going to punch, but he also screams like a little female tennis player. I'm sorry, man. He's a terrible fighter. He is so bad. Dude, he makes Blair Cobb look like Canelo Alvarez.
Damn.
Yep.
Wow.
And that's my assessment. Trust your eyes, guys. They don't deceive you in this case. Joe Strummer says Romero is a dirty fighter.
I love it.
That's the understatement of the week, Joe.
I love it. I love it.
Okay, so Muhammad is hanging with us. Thank you for hanging with us, Muhammad. He says, Joseph, do you think that somehow Usyk can hurt AJ, or at least get his respect?
Absolutely.
If so, all bets are off. Let me tell you something that Paulie Malignaggi told me one day. Right? It is funny. This is back when we used to frequent Paulie on the show, on my old radio show about 10 years ago. He told me, Joseph, even though people say that I've got pillow fists and I can't hurt him, he said, I'm a grown man. I don't care, and with 8-ounce gloves or 10-ounce gloves, I don't care if someone doesn't have world-class power or elite level power. It's a grown man hitting you in the face and in the body. It's not going to feel downy soft. It's going to hurt, right? So to answer your question, Mohammed, can Usyk hurt AJ? Of course he can. Look at the Michael Hunter fight at cruiserweight. He bludgeoned Michael Hunter, and he whooped his ass, and he hurt him several times, right? Looks like we just lost my brother Karray, but we'll keep going. Yeah, so Usyk, make no mistake about it, guys. He's not a tiny man. He's not a guy who's known for his power because he doesn't load up. But any guy who's that big and weighs that much can hurt anyone in the ring, especially if he hits Anthony Joshua with something he doesn't see coming. Our brother Muhammad also states, Rolly Romero's style is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Yes, he is. He can't fight, guys. He can't fight, okay? Trust your eyes. He can't fight. And when he starts getting frustrated, he resorts to body slamming his opposition, just like he did poor Can You Dig It, Yigit, right? Yigit, if he had any semblance of power, could have won that fight. So he says, once again, final comment by Muhammad. Going back to Charlo, I didn't see no dog in him, unlike a Bud Crawford. Very good observation. Unfortunately, Charlo has a lot of dog in him. Just on a personal level, I know this to be true. In my opinion, and I stated this earlier, he was questioning his conditioning. I think he's outgrown the 154-pound weight division. He is a much better fighter than what we saw on Saturday. Now, once again, though, give credit to Brian Castano for fighting a very intelligent fight, applying intelligent pressure, and working, throwing sharp, crisp combinations on the inside once he was there and had Charlo against the ropes. Obviously, Charlo respected his power, which made him ultimately a more tentative version of himself, right? But no, look, Bud Crawford is a special fighter, guys, and you're going to see that later on this year or next year when he starts fighting fighters outside of the top-ranked promotional banner. From what I've been told, yeah, he's going to leave Top Rank, and that may not be something like up to him. From what I've been told, Top Rank is no longer in the Terrence Crawford business. Like, even if Terrence Crawford wanted to re-sign with Top Rank doesn't want to continue paying him that big guaranteed $4 million per fight if they can't get opponents who's going to make it worth the money, right? If it's not cost effective, Top Rank doesn't want to have any part of it, right? So, Joseph, I heard the Charlo fight wasn't sold out. No, it wasn't. That like the home of the San Antonio Spurs, it's a massive basketball arena, and it holds almost 19,000, right? From where I was sitting, from what I saw, it looked about 12, 13 tops, 13 and a half, 14,000, which is still a very healthy crowd. But no, it wasn't sold out, brother. There were still a lot of seats available, but it was a healthy turnout, and I was very, very pleased with the amount of support that both fighters received from the South Texas fight fans. Tell you what, though, that's going to just about do it. My brother Karray, it looks like he's out for the night. So on behalf of Mr. Karray Bradshaw, Guys, I'm Joseph Herron. You've been listening to WAWR Week Radio. And once again, guys, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And also, please check out our articles on FightSaga.com. But, guys, have a wonderful Tuesday evening, everybody.